the state, versus it would take me where I am now, basically the border of New Hampshire and Maine, or where I was, it's back to New York, back to central New York. So going all the way through New Hampshire, through Vermont, through Albany, back to Syracuse, that would only be 5 hours, apparently, somehow. Or I think you have to go through Massachusetts is faster, but the point is, but yet going just through the state of Maine alone is 5 hours just. So here's a few interesting facts, is that the northernmost part of Maine, somewhere in like Minnesota, northernmost spot in the country, it does have the easternmost spot in the country, which I guess is whatever, this stupid one that starts with a Q that I already forgot. Quaddy Head. It doesn't make sense that it would be west either, because it's, but whatever, it's the furthest coast, whatever. It's like, you know, so that's one noteworthy thing. There's also it's not north, it would be northwest Maine, where it's like this big 3.5 million acre privately owned just land. And what that allows you to see is that it's like logging area, it's like just very remote and there's nothing there, right? So like, that's a very odd spot. It's like one of the most remote areas in the country. See, I didn't know all this just coming here. I knew it was a remote state, but like, it's a big state too. Like, it's got to be one of the biggest compared to its remoteness, right? Like, okay, Vermont was remote, but it's small. This is one thing I've seen a couple of Dairy Queen here that I'm surprised, because you don't see that even in big cities sometimes, or like, right, like there's not many sometimes for like 40, 50 miles. Or this must be the same one that I just went to. So the weird thing about this one is they don't make certain things. They don't make like the chicken strips that I like, so I'm getting trolled by Dairy Queen. Like, they have a limited menu. This is more like Dairy Queen Treat, it's called, versus Dairy Queen like Grill and Chill, where it makes some of the chicken and other stuff. So all these weird differences that you'll get. But no, some of these states do kind of piss me off, even though I'm of the more minimalistic mindset. When you aren't traveling like this, it's just like, there are times where it's like, oh, there's nowhere to go to use the bathroom. There's nowhere to go to, like Vermont was just killing me with that. Nowhere to go to like just do anything, right, for long stretches. So Vermont is like that, Maine is like that. New Hampshire wasn't really like that. Connecticut definitely isn't like that, although maybe certain parts of it are. So like, you got to think like, what's the most remote location in each state or something like that. And the one thing I've also noticed on this trip that I really didn't understand to this extent is the insane number of Dunkin' Donuts everywhere. There are more Dunkin' Donuts than anything else that I've seen, right? It doesn't matter what it is. McDonald's, Burger King, could be anything. There's literally 3-to-1 Dunkin' Donuts of anything else. Like, that is insane, right? It's one of those weird, you don't think of it as the like richest franchise, right? The way that some of those are, but just, it's definitely like the Dollar General, Dollar Tree type of vibe. That's just like quantity over quality. But hey Waffles, how's it going? So yeah, this will be a nice remote drive. This is pretty much the end of our trip, right? I have to hang around here for a couple days. I have to do something in Portland, but I'll go to this side, and then, you know, we're going kind of to the north, and then I'm pretty much done. Then I'll go back, which the drive back is kind of hilariously short compared to how long this trip has been, obviously because I've taken my time and slow paced it. But it's like the whole drive is only 5 hours, so I could have come like from where I am, Syracuse, to here. So I could have come in one day and come back in the same day, assuming that was, you know, what I had to do. Like, it just seems so much longer than that. Right, in a straight shot, I could go back and forth in the same day. So the road quality in some of these states is a little bit lacking as well. Although there's a certain irony and duality to that. Sometimes it's better, even though it's more remote, and you might think, how can that be? It's because people don't drive on those roads as much, so they don't need as much work, right? That could be the flip side. So, you know, you think, oh, a big city is going to have the best roads because they put more work into them, but they also need more work. versus a small town might have better roads because, yeah, they might not put as much priority on working on them, but they also, people don't drive as much, so it kind of balances itself out. Of course, the winters here are brutal, probably more brutal even than New York, right? No doubt. But this will be the last longest drive that we have. Wait, why is it? Oh, maybe I missed a turn. That'll be the problem too. Like, there won't be like a straight stretch of road. It'll just be a bunch of random stuff, right? So, yeah, like that remoteness, there's a certain freedom in that. Like, what if you tried to do that? Okay, you go to that northeast Maine woods thing, northwest Maine woods, and you try to live there. And then it's like, oh, this is the minimalist solution, but it's actually, it's still private property, so you won't be able to, you still won't be able to do that, right? So even when you're doing that minimalist sacrifice sort of thing, right, you're just trying to not benefit, quote unquote, from society and certain things. Even that's not allowed, or especially that can't be allowed. And the reason why is because then everybody could be free, right? So make no mistake, you might be trapped in your own excesses and exuberance, but the reality is that if somebody could make a model of how somebody could be free, you know, just farm or just do something self-sufficient, it's like, oh, needing electricity. Well, you really don't need electricity. Why do you need it, right? If you have food, you know, you might want it as a convenience, but we take certain things for granted like that, and we're kind of controlled by them. Like, oh no, whatever would we do without electricity? Like, what did people do before? And a lot of it's only necessary to acquiesce to two things. Number one, you're acquiescing to the monopolization of nature itself, which means that, you know, this, like, corporations, etc., monopolize all the valuable resources in the world. So now, instead of just going out and directly getting them yourself, you have to rely on them in the name of some collective overextended mass of people. So if it was just you're alone. It's like, oh, you rely on society. What would you do without it? So now, without it, well, the whole world is yours and it's free. And even if you say, well, you'd be competing for resources with other people, there's still plenty of resources for everybody, while assuming a population issue. But even then, there's clearly enough for everybody because you have all these excesses and exuberance and all that. So, like, in either scenario, you don't need it, and you're only being preyed on by other people because you're competing. So in this case, you're not competing, you're conceding, right? You're just conceding, okay, I give up nature to corporations, period. Even though nobody really has an inherent right to that. It's just established by force, you know, in the past in a way that we would condemn now if it happened, but we just accept it. So the point is that you can see the monopolization of resources. So now it's like, oh, you need running water, but you really don't need running water. There's plenty of water, but oh, because you're not allowed to seek it out yourself, or you know, have that. So therefore, you rely on running water because of the concession to a monopoly over nature, and because of the collective mass of people who thereby then require it. So that would be the minimalist / absolutist solution to it. Either, okay, you would just go take it yourself, right? But, oh, you have to defer to unqualified empirical authority, monopolization. But the second part of it is the fact that you would be putting yourself in a position where you don't need it at all then. So then what? Like, you as an individual do not need that, right? Side of you sacrifice, concede everything, inherent nature, reality itself. Yeah, this town was Sanford, which was kind of nice actually. It had some essential things, Walmart and stuff, but it wasn't like overly big either. Okay, I don't want any benefits of those things, but it doesn't matter, right? It's like it's a compelled benevolent benefit, like, oh, but it's for your own good, and oh, you want that. What if you don't want it, but you're still controlled by it? You know, they try to bribe you almost. So what if you say, I don't want those overcompensations, but you're still going to be controlled either way, right? You're still subject to that control. So it's part of what like normalcy is in a socially compelled way. Normalcy would be like, oh, it's normal to want these things, or it's normal to do this or that. But those things are only created through social engineering. It's not like inherently that's just how people are and everybody else around you. I don't get it. That would seem to be negative, but it actually, especially in the supposed environmentalist care thing, where we supposedly care about that, it's like, well, the best way to do that, like, well, if you value something like the environment or whatever it is, it's not you being born in nature and then, that's how you are, therefore it's normal, that's how people are. We actually condemn and retcon and try to write that out of existence in the way that we actually inherently are. And then the second part of that is like, which is why it's so unbelievable that people would take them seriously, but a norm is set like, okay, we're all exposed to the same indoctrination by the same society and youth, or we're exposed to the same influences, we're subject to the same government or corporations or whatever. So that social engineering, that indoctrinated in the same way. So how relatable, how much we take pride in that versus, okay, it might have seemed to be a necessity, but you're still aware of the nature of the process. Why would you be proud of that? It's just only necessary to control a mass of people. It's in flaws as well as its advantages. So it's kind of a limiting thing, right? Where you're not free, but you're taking pride in the subversive state that you're substitute gratification for actual value. And part of that also comes along with it's like it's love, it's meant to be, so they appeal to your ego to control you, or even like the arbitrary, and again it's a false inherent contrivance response that that you would try to frame it as inherent and absolute, even though it's inherent and absolute, like the state that we're then reactively pressured into, right? I can't tell if it's freezing or what, because I don't trust these areas sometimes for service. So at least this is like a nice 10-mile stretch of road. But yeah, let's deconstruct that for a second, because it puts you in a position where Lyman, like part of this is just, okay, since we're doing this drive anyway, okay, it's bonds. So you don't want to look at it like that. You'll say, oh no, it's social contrivance and it's being normal and it's, it's taking pride in that, and, social, like human ego gratification is the way that people are controlled. Like something's valuable enough. Globalist corporations and government that are, monopolizing something. Oh, but you have to be nice to the cashier socially. Like, so it comes down to that. But if you truly value, you're a tool in that way to reinforce any government ever, any corporation ever, right? They'll always have these thing of like, oh, well, value that is like a subversive state. But like you would think this would be a very cheap state to live in. Yeah, like people are trained like animals, so then they react that way. Like they want overcompensation for a subversive state instead of freedom from said subversive state, which basically means like, so they don't question or realize the way in which they're being controlled, which is the kind of thing you would do with an animal. Like you can't just reveal the nature of the process, let it all hang out. We all walk around naked. We're all fully aware of the nature of the process and the overextended globalist empirical nature of think about all that. So it comes down to who can best disguise that, not whether it applies or not. And then, so you just take it for granted as an absolute, even though nothing is absolute. And then they lack the ability to appeal to the social contrivance, artificial elements that they're deliberately trying not to appeal to and trying to reveal the artifice of. So it's like, you have to, if you were to do it directly, then, oh, that'll be ignored, or because if they were able to perceive that, then they wouldn't be controlled in that way in the first place. Also, like, if you are a false fallacy type of thing, false duality, like, it's your fault for questioning it or thinking about it, not its fault for existing or all of this. So I don't have the energy sometimes to do this the way I normally would, but let me think here. When I was like, this is near the tip of the state, so you're telling me it'll be another 3 hours to get to where I don't get it. You know, you're trained like an animal and controlled in that way, but you'll see it differently. So the glorification of human things for human purpose, because we're humans and we have a big ego, we glorify things that otherwise would be, oh, we're training them like we're training an animal. You're using, not only is that not a good thing, but you're using this supposed human value as a pretense to control people in a specific way. So, right, it sort of shows this both the state for some zero-sum functionalism, even if it's an exuberance, excess is needless, which most of human history is. Like, you don't really need a lot of things that you do and have that you struggle for and stuff like that, and even by your own subjective standard of measure that you supposedly have, so you'll just use it as a pretense. Yeah, I would expect it should be super cheap to live in a place like this, I'd be honest with you. Instead of realizing they didn't choose them, they insist upon them as though they did choose them. Right, or they take pride in them. So again, you're controlled in a way of social engineering that right, like, if you observe it, that's why self-awareness is so bad. And so people desire that middle. Right, the form in which they're controlled versus simply being controlled, as in, or didn't overcompensate. Not that the ultimate goal is, let's remove the need to do that. Let's treat it as a zero-sum process and be free of it. Right, which by the same measure would be more efficient, or it just reveals like a conditional fallacy, because you're not at peace with it, but whether you're not at peace comes down to the social contrivance appearance over whether, again, the right appearance is kept up to keep the nature of the process hidden, not tied together. In fact, they're often in contrast, one to kind of cover up the other. So the thing is that reinforcement over compensation. So if you let it speak for itself, that's a bad thing. So you're kind of like competing against the artifice of contrivance that uses that as a tool instead of the process, and everything has to be projected and framed in false duality because nothing else can possibly exist. So that's always the perception of how people are. Sunny or that hot today. It's only 67. It's only 67 degrees. But yeah, the point is that, you know, you would kind of, in perception, people would rather have a perfect mediocrity, quote unquote perfect, that right appears good on the surface. They don't have to think about it too much. right, the appearance or awareness of thought is a bad thing. So the process is the same, but they're just not aware of it, or they just don't care. Often, again, exuberance, excesses. So it's a bread and circuses thing to the T. And so now it puts you in a position where, wait, they actually still have cash? the other way, or you would see like modern society with excesses, excesses and exuberance as a placeholder, or come from the bread and circuses out. Like we overcompensate for the contrivance state, but not how we can actually qualify. They can say it's some pseudo form of Darwinism, but even that's inconsistent because it's like a. But then, there's all these certain special applications, and everything is about the initial. The surface level. They're unthinking, so it comes down to undue emphasis, pretense. Again, using human reinforcement, and especially for those not aware of the nature of the process, who just are seeing some overcompensation or ego gratification. So, right, it's this weird selective pretense, but there's nothing actually behind it. It's completely without credibility. So again, it's projected in false duality, especially where it doesn't apply. All selectively applied. Again, it's basically just ego insistence to try to reinforce. Now that is, but that's kind of how a collective mass is always, that somebody forced upon them. Again, it's not about what the standard is, but right, there is no standard. You go along with anything, and then it comes down to a contest of overcompensation. Right, again, the emperor has no clothes found. Yeah, like the deference is concession kind of a concept I can talk about too, is the fact that everything you do, you're deferring to something that isn't absolute. That's a man-made, Rome before the fall to bread and circuses, or World War II Germany, or China, or whatever. We'd like to think, our time is different, ours is different. It's not absolute exclusive to everything else, so again, the way that you get to a uniform collective state is by bypassing critical thinking and standards. It means that you're not really holding a standard, so now it's arbitrary. So if you're aware of the nature of the process, you can see that, anything can happen. The selfish and egotistical nature of people that's used to control them, basically, they don't have standards, they don't care about logic and reason or truth or reality. They're willing to look the other way from that. Exuberance, successes, technology, etc., that would honestly be desired in large part, be retroactively like, okay, we're going to overcompensate and distract from it. Yeah, being self-aware, free is negative, and thinking as the only way to stop them from doing it themselves, because otherwise you'd realize, why should we fear thought then? Right, that as if we can't. Again, we're like animals, and completely. You would have to have a very negative opinion of people to rationalize the kind of restriction that we. Right, to see, look how much I can put up a better appearance, or some myopic framing as much. Right, but it's universally applied, like, everybody's guilty until proven innocent. Right. But anything, but like people don't really care, or they don't really think. So again, truth doesn't matter to them. Reality doesn't matter to them. The ability to think, which defines separation, they wouldn't be at peace with the state, but they right, is inconsistent, arbitrary, self-invalidating, even by the pretenses it uses to justify itself that are selectively applied. Oh, it's some absolute that you're posing to, false absolute to specify or to value something, but then, it requires that you censor reality. You say, it's absolute, but it requires, you're conceding it's not absolute, exclusive to everything else. Protocol. You defer to it, and then it comes down to your ability to acquiesce to a false absolute, but you're doing that in service of a contriving state that often or government rules, and other people acquiesce to them so easily and take gratification from how well they acquiesce to them. But never mind the fact that it's only necessary, setting that in place are themselves people too who are somehow exempt from that need and even have the credibility to, whereas the neutral could be more pure, by doing less or by doing nothing, at least you're more consistent. Those who don't, again, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, I can just simplify it like that, but basically, that's where cognitive dissonance or self-aware, egotistical and selfish or whatever, and indignant insists upon something, and that gives you credibility. Or you're overcompensating with the crime state. But you see, they're revealing the non-absolute nature of the process, so it's their fault. You shoot the messenger, and it's their fault for revealing that to other people or not overcompensating. That shows you it's not a sound process. By people's own standard, they would have issue with it. So it requires your overcompensation or outward insistence and otherwise. Versus overcompensation for an exuberant excess state, false. But it comes down to absolutist. So if everything's done or inhibited for zero-sum functionalism, then if you achieve it to some half-functional basis, but it's gratified as though there's some special meaning in it. Patience is a virtue, but you're the world's first trillionaire, and your lack of patience allowed you to cure cancer and make renewable energy. So if you truly have a basic there is otherwise it would just be bare, naked on the back, getting hit by the sun. So I don't know. The sun doesn't seem that bad today, and it's only 67 degrees, but thing. I don't know. Yeah, but it's something that's just out there, something that's preconceived, something that you're exposed to a lot, something that, hearing about over and over. So just by sheer preconception, exposure, established repetition, now you value it for that reason alone. So you couldn't even really explain exactly why you value it. It's just right. It's sort of arbitrary, and you're controlled by something that you don't even right, that you couldn't even explain why. It's just sort of random. It's just could be anything, interchangeable, right? So it's the credibility check that people should have. Like, it might seem like, oh, it's just funny, it's just a meme, but like everything, the reason why it appeals to you is the self-subversion, right? So that's kind of what society tries to do, is it tries to get you to give up trying to value things. Like, just give up and now become selfish, and just everything is non-based of self, ego projected, overcompensation, exuberance, right? It's not about the truth. The truth doesn't matter. Reality doesn't matter. Value doesn't matter. In some weird way, fiction and folly favoritism is always like that, where, you know, it's just it's sort of like everything is an ego basis, right? Oh, look at this person trying to be objective and actually have a standard and a base of value, which which society doesn't have, and then you'll define them in the ways that they're forced to reactively respond to society, or if not, then they're outside of society, and then you wouldn't acknowledge them anyway, because, right, so no matter what you do, right, what would give you credibility? Right, if you're criticizing corporate, things, monopoly over stuff, okay, but then you're still using certain things. Okay, so go live out in the woods, but then, oh, you're not allowed to, or oh, you'll be trespassing or something. But even if you do all that, okay, you really are living as a minimalist, but then, oh, nobody's gonna care about you then. So no matter what you do, either you acquiesce to the contrivance state, or you don't. So you could be the world's first trillionaire, but oh, look how you benefited from the contrivance state, so you're out of touch, you're spoiled by it. Or oh, you are a minimalist, so now, oh, you're not going through the hardships of coping with the contrivance state. That's why you're able to observe it objectively. Like, at what point are you sacrificing from it? There's like a blanket value statement of, like, just gratification. It's right about it, or half-mass pretense is used to control something, but it's not really consistent. So that's the thing. Like, your standard would be the ability to achieve that, not that your standard is just different or higher in the first place. Some of these roads in some of these states are just boring you to sleep, basically. At some point they told me to do that, but I don't know if that's really necessary in the daytime. Really pisses me off. people actually take themselves seriously, even though you're exhibiting the same process that people have done in the past that you don't understand. You're just endlessly repeating because of the contrived standard subversive self-insistence. But it's just like, that somehow use this credibility or a privilege, like, oh, we can't question something because whatever, people wear it as like a defining badge of themselves, which is really a great thing of the stimuli acme. Like, you use it as privilege or some other thing, and then make ends meet for the children that you didn't have to have, that you chose to have, that you, again, either you're a hedonistic animal who can't control themselves, or you're doing it as some overcompensation for a lack of purpose that you have, or some other benefit state. And even though everything, or so yeah, I like that zero-sum privilege argument too. It's like, oh, the only reason why someone is such and such is because of the overcompensation zero-sum means, let's say, privilege that they have. I think you do, or other aspects, it's still because, oh, the privilege of empires, like, oh, your country was built on, and again, I'm not specifying, I'm saying this applies to every, they didn't wage too many wars, or they didn't enslave people, or, so the pacifist country that didn't do all those things versus the empires that did do all those things. Now, in the modern day, you had of other countries that maybe didn't benefit from some of those things. So, right, it's a weird double standard from those things. So yeah, those are a few things, like, and the privilege that just, right, it's not necessary for you, it's necessary to tolerate that contrivance state. And so, oh, if you took that away, then what would it anymore? So it's like this weird, the ultimate sort of emperor has no clothes fallacy, but in the bread and circuses variation, because, like, because of those things, so you're using that in service of it, so it's like, oh, look at you with the privilege of those things that are only necessary to overeat. So, like, so again, that's for social contrivance. The art of social contrivance comes in, of, like, how well you can overcompensate for that subversive contrivance state, but there's never any desire to be. You just concede to a non-value subversive state, or you treat it as an absolute, but then it comes down to constant overcompensation that you need to maintain it. States that reinforces any government ever, rather than questioning it, or even just being aware of it and observing it. Okay, it's a zero-sum process, conditionally, we're tolerating it, we're putting up with it, whatever. Instead, it's, oh, it's, or you are, you're either, rather than letting the reality speak for itself, and then if the reality is negative, then that would be your fault, that would be its fault, but somehow it's misframed as your fault. So, like, you're more concerned about, again, a consistent logical basis and measure that you might have, whatever that measure might be, right, to qualify the state that you're in, rather than, like, okay, you, from it, or not that you're subject to it. Or even, again, on a conditional level, you can tolerate it, but the end goal thinking person would see, oh, it's this person's fault for not overcompensating socially for this, so remove the need for it, even themselves or others. Right, remove the need for the process and be free of it, instead of this conditional concession at half-mast that's self-created by people's own. It's always this self-created subversion that happens. Again, in service of unqualified empirical authority in an overextended way, is really a pointless thing to explain, because duality, false absolute, not inherent objective reality in which they're trained animals being constantly controlled, especially by their own ego gratification overcompensation, which, again, within our infinite objective mind that we all have as a human being, and reality and truth are negative. Instead, we need this sort of pseudo framing that's only necessary in a controlled subversive state where we are not free. So freedom is bad, thinking is bad. There is no absolute exclusive to everything else. And so now you lead to a situation where I think I need some sugar. I mean, I've been so tired. Like a box of raisins here. Pretty much I've had no like actual dessert items. Or that's not true though. I just had like ice cream the other day, or even yesterday, like the Dairy Queen thing. But I feel like I haven't had candy or cakes or ice cream that comes with like a meal. But no, it's like if everything is, oh, you're controlled on the basis of blank. Right, then what would the minimalist or the absolutist do? They would think, well, how can I get blank enough so that I no longer need to be controlled, or now at least I can be a consistent measure, objective thought, etc. So, yeah, that's like a good example of you're controlled more based on the number of people. So why is the speed limit here 70, whereas normally on much more packed roads you would think, why wouldn't it be 70 there? But that's actually why it's 65, because there's more traffic, whereas here you assume there's not a lot of traffic. Used as a pretense. The more people there are, the more rules there are, the more controlled you are. That's true of big cities. It's also true of overall human population. It's true of countries. You know, it shows you that people are not at peace with their own contrived state, so it comes down to appearances and stuff like that. So you, is it really this many tolls that I'm paying on this one trip? Like, how can it be? Why are there so many? There's so yeah, it's like this nonsensical argument. You're put in a subversive state as a human being when you're young and indoctrinated into society, which has a nation like, oh, be quiet and be good and be well behaved in this unqualified empirical state created originally by force, etc., etc. Like, you're treating that like it's a state of reality, but acquiesce. But no, it's like there's the absolutist revealing the contrived state, because what do you mean? Oh no, this is 70, so I don't get it. Like, these are both easy pass, but this is like the by plate thing by comparison. We've seen, Dunkin' can't escape. We've seen more Burger Kings than these than I saw them anywhere else in the southern Maine, so. As an inherent human being with immense potential and the infinite objective mind and the freedom and variable, you are taken and trained like an animal, indoctrinated, and you're trying to overcompensate with technology and stuff like that. What happens is you are do, but then they're also not credible, and there's no basis for structure, the reinforcing the false absolute empirical state. But so that's why religion is like a bypassing of critical thinking. But even that's done in service of a specific drive to say there's something to in the real world. But